The High Tatras is a rugged but beautiful mountain range that attracts climbers, tourists, and explorers with its wild nature and dangerous routes. However, in the history of these mountains, there are pages covered with mystery and unexplained disappearances that still remain a mystery for rescuers and explorers. They went into the mountains, experienced travelers, families, hunters, and foresters who knew the terrain well. They planned their usual routes. They were not going to take any risks. They warned their loved ones about the time of their return. But at some point, traces of their presence were suddenly cut off, and their fate remained unknown. Where did they disappear? How could this happen in places that had been thoroughly explored by search teams? Why did their equipment and belongings end up in locations they couldn't get to on their own? Today we will tell you about some of the strangest cases of disappearances in the Tatras. Realistic, documented stories where the mysteries multiply with every trace found. These are not legends, not fiction. These are real people who left behind strange traces and unsolvable questions. Tomas Kolar was an experienced mountaineer, known in the small circles of Bratislava as a man who preferred extreme climbing alone. However, on that fateful day, September 12, 2001, he climbed the Gerlakovsky Stitit as part of a group of 5. It was not his first visit to the High Tatras. He had conquered this massif many times, knew the terrain, weather conditions, routes, and could not just disappear without a trace. But that's exactly what happened. The ascent started at 6:30 a.m. from Slezský Dom, a popular mountain refuge in the Tatras. The group followed a standard route through the Velika Valley, avoiding difficult sections as 2 of the participants had no serious mountaineering experience. Despite strong wind and cloud cover, all 5 reached the summit safely at 11:40 a.m. They spent no more than 15 minutes on the summit, took pictures, had a snack, and started their descent. The descent was slow and visibility was reduced due to fog. At about 2450 meters, when the group reached the crest, Tomas suddenly stopped. He said he had a problem with his shoes. The carabiner on his crampons had broken. Since the section was technically difficult, the group offered to wait, but Tomas assured them that he could manage on his own. He said he would catch up with them in a few minutes. The group continued their descent. They went about 500 meters down, but they still did not see Tomas. Then one of the participants took out a whistle and signaled, and the same sound was heard in response. A few minutes later, a second signal was heard, but it was more muffled, then silence. Then, when Tomas did not show up at the camp at the bottom, his friends sounded the alarm. Rescuers from the Tatra Mountain Service, volunteers, and even an army helicopter joined the search. For 3 weeks, all possible ways of descent were examined, including areas where he might have accidentally slipped or fallen. But no trace of Tomas was ever found. No remnants of rope, no equipment, no torn clothing. In the harsh highlands, his body should have been found, but it was as if it had disappeared. The only clue came on the 6th day of the search. One of the rescuers noticed fresh shoe tracks on a steep slope, but they abruptly broke off on a small ledge. Under the ledge is a 300-meter cliff. The logical assumption would be that Tomas had fallen off, but there was nothing below, no body, no sign of impact. Another strange detail: his whistle was never found. Even if he had fallen, the whistle, the carbine, or some of his equipment should have been left behind. It's been 3 years. Officially, the search was stopped in November 2001, but climbers who knew Tomas never gave up trying to solve the mystery of his disappearance. In July 2004, a group of Slovak climbers passing through the Lomnický Ridge, more than 20 kilometers from the place of disappearance, came across a climbing carabiner with the remains of the rope. It had Tomas's initials on it, and a check confirmed that the equipment belonged to Tomas Kolar. But the strangest part was something else. The carabiner was in a place he couldn't have gotten to on his own. This area is one of the most inaccessible places in the Tatras. To get there, Tomas had to walk 20 kilometers through glaciers and rock ridges without equipment, without food or water, and without leaving any traces on the way. What's more, the carbine didn't look like it had been sitting for 3 years in harsh conditions. The strap that was attached to it showed no signs of prolonged decomposition, as if it had been left there only recently. Since the discovery of Tomas Kolar's carbine in 2004, questions about its disappearance have only multiplied. Officially, the investigation could not explain how the equipment could have ended up on the Lomnicki Ridge, which was more than 20 kilometers away from the place where he was last contacted. Moreover, if his body had been carried by snow, avalanche, or glacier, why then had not a single piece of his clothing, backpack, or other pieces of equipment been found? Early official speculation pointed to natural causes. Perhaps Tomas became disoriented in the fog, strayed off the route, and went too far away. With the drastic temperature difference, strong winds, and lack of oxygen, he could have died of hypothermia. However, rescuers raised another question. Even if that was the case, why had the body not been found in all the years of searching? Other theories pointed to third-party intervention. In those years, poachers were sometimes found in the mountains, and traces of illegal hunting were repeatedly found in remote areas of the Tatras. However, the absence of signs of a struggle and the nature of the find spoke against this theory. If Tomas had really been killed, his body could not have been so far away, and even without a trace. The summer of 1983 was hot, and the Stanek family, Rudolf 39, Veronica 36, and their 7-year-old daughter Lenka, decided to spend their vacation in the high Tatras, enjoying nature and short hikes to mountain lakes. They chose Markov Siedlo as the starting point, and the final destination of the hike was to be one of the picturesque lakes, Popradskie Pleso, popular among tourists. According to family friends, it was an ordinary walk for nature lovers. The route passed through the Popradska Valley, was used by hundreds of travelers each year, and was considered relatively safe. The family left the Grand Hotel Smokovec on the morning of July 14, 1983, informing the staff that they planned to return for dinner. They took light backpacks with snacks, a supply of water, and clothing in case of inclement weather. They were seen by other hikers along the way. The family looked cheerful, walking at a good pace, and little Lenka was happy to walk, occasionally picking flowers along the trail. No one noticed anything strange except one witness, an elderly tourist from the Czech Republic, who remembered that at a certain moment the family slowed down and the father began to scrutinize something outside the trail. What exactly it was, she couldn't say. By late afternoon, when the family didn't return to the hotel, the alarm began. At first, the staff thought they might have just been delayed, but by midnight, it was clear that something strange had happened. When the morning of July 15th came, the alarm bell was raised and High Tatras Search and Rescue launched an operation to find the missing family. Their footprints broke off in the middle of the trail. At dawn on July 15th, the High Tatras Search and Rescue Service began combing the route the Stanek family was taking. At first, rescuers were confident that they would find them in the next few hours. Perhaps they had simply lost their bearings, gotten lost, or hid from the night's cold. The operation covered the main trails leading to Popradskie Pleso, as well as the neighborhoods of Veliki Lake and Gerlikovsky Shield, which were in relative proximity. The problem was that there were no tracks. The rescuers expected to find traces of a campfire, things left behind, but they found nothing. A few hikers recalled seeing the family, but no one could say which direction they had gone in the afternoon. The last confirmed sighting of the family was at 1:40 p.m., when they were spotted near Ostrava, at an elevation of 1,980 meters. After that, it was a blank. Towards the end of the second day of the search, rescuers began to feel real anxiety. It was relatively warm in the mountains, but at night the temperature dropped to +4 degrees C. If the family spent the night in the forest or among the rocks, they could be in danger of hypothermia. On the third day of the search, a helicopter joined the operation. It flew over hard-to-reach areas, rocks and gorges, but there were no traces. By July 20th, rescuers began to doubt the version of the lost tourists. They were alarmed that none of the family's belongings had been found. Even if they had gone off the trail, at least some fragments of clothing, a backpack, or shoe tracks should have been left behind, but there was nothing. In the fall of 1987, a shepherd named Joseph Grabar, while driving his cattle through a valley near Lake Poprada, came across something strange. In one of the rocky crevices, overgrown with moss and lichens, he noticed a piece of cloth stuck between rocks. When he picked it up, it turned out to be a child's sweater. Worn, faded, but with no signs of decomposition. Joseph immediately reported it to the local mountain rescue post. The discovered sweater was handed over to the police, who compared it to the description of the clothes worn by Lenka Stanek on the day she disappeared. The match was almost complete. A light blue knitted sweater with a bear cub embroidered on the chest. The strangest thing was the place of the discovery. This crevice was located only a kilometer away from the main hiking trail the family was on, but it had been searched more than once. Rescuers claimed to have been up there several times over the years. Why hadn't they found the sweater sooner? What's more, it didn't look like it had been in the wilderness for 4 years. No footprints were found nearby, no bones, no other articles of clothing. There was nothing around to explain how he got there. The only theory the police were considering was that the sweater had been planted, but by whom and why? The rescuers climbed up into the crevasse and began a new search. They examined every rock, looked into caves, sifted the ground, but found nothing else. No Rudolph, no Veronica, no Lenka. The family disappeared just like they did 4 years ago. The only clue was a sweater that appeared where it wasn't supposed to be. That incident quickly became a rumor. Some said that the Stanek family had been led away into the forest by an unknown force. Others said that there were hidden underground tunnels in the Tatras where they could have gotten lost. But even after decades, their disappearance remains one of the strangest mysteries of the Slovak mountains. The Bielanske Tatras are a small but picturesque mountain range in northeastern Slovakia, known for their limestone ridges, sparse caves, and suddenly changing weather. Local foresters and mountain rescuers have repeatedly said that it is easy to get lost in these places. Dense fogs, deep ravines, and rocky precipices make any walk potentially dangerous. Peter Lanic had been a forester since 1974 and was a seasoned expert on the local trails. His job was to monitor the condition of the forest, checking for illegal logging and poachers. He knew the Bielanski Tatras like the back of his hand, which makes his disappearance in 1981 even stranger. On October 10, 1981, Lanic rode out on his horse from early morning. That day he was to inspect sections of the forest in the trail area below the Jarno Massif. He planned to return in the evening, but he did not. His colleagues did not sound the alarm immediately, suggesting that he might have stayed overnight in one of the old forest cabins. The next morning, the forest rangers went in search of him. They found the horse fairly quickly. It was tied up at one of the old oaks near the beginning of the trail. Apparently, Lanic had left it there himself, intending to continue on foot. However, he was nowhere to be found. Surveying the nearby ravines and gorges, the foresters found no signs of a struggle or accident. There were no signs of a rock slide, fallen trees, or signs of a wild animal attack. It seemed as if he had simply vanished. In the following days, a full-scale search began. Rescuers combed trails, gorges, and forests within a radius of 10 kilometers. Dogs were used, but they were unable to pick up the trail. It was as if the man had simply disappeared. Helicopters flew over dangerous areas, but no clothes, no backpack, no traces of Lanic were found. Various theories have been considered. One of them was an accident. However, in such a case, his body would surely have been found, because every possible chasm and cliff had been thoroughly examined. The second theory was that he had been attacked by a wild animal. However, this too did not explain the absence of any trace of blood or remnants of clothing. After a few weeks, the search was called off. Lanic was officially reported missing. 9 years later, in 1990, a group of speleologists explored a hard-to-reach cave in the Bielianske Tatras, near the Polish border. In one of the stone crevices, they came across an old pocket knife wedged between rocks. The find sparked renewed interest in the disappearance of the forester. The cave was 15 kilometers from where they found his horse. How could he have ended up there? Moreover, the way to this cave was difficult. It passed through steep slopes and rocky areas that required mountaineering equipment. Even an experienced climber would have had a hard time getting there without specialized equipment. After the discovery of the knife, many theories emerged. One of them suggested that Lanic had been kidnapped. But by whom and why? He had no enemies, was not involved in anything that could attract criminal elements. It is also unclear why his item was found in a cave, a place he probably never entered. Another hypothesis suggested that he had gotten lost, but then why was his body not found in any of the possible search areas? Besides, experienced foresters rarely lose their bearings in familiar terrain. Some locals have put forward more mystical speculations. In the Bielansky Tatras, there are legends about zones of silence, places where the usual laws of nature are broken. In these areas, people supposedly lose their bearings and sometimes disappear without a trace. Could Lanic have been a victim of such a phenomenon? Others drew attention to stories of strange lights that can sometimes be seen in the mountains. On the night of his disappearance, several locals allegedly saw bluish flickering flashes near his route. Coincidence? There was no official investigation after the knife was found. Investigators had no reason to believe that a crime had taken place. The fact of the find was explained simply. Perhaps the knife was lost by someone else, although the initials on the handle clearly pointed to Lanic. In 1993, Peter Lanic was officially recognized as dead. His family never received answers to their questions. The story of his disappearance has remained one of the most mysterious in the Bielansky Tatras. Speleologists who found the knife later recounted that the cave where it was discovered had given them an unsettling feeling ever since. Some claim that after the discovery they heard strange sounds at night, resembling footsteps inside the tunnels. But no explanation for this has ever been found. The legend of the forester who disappeared in the Bielansky Tatras is still passed on among locals. Years and decades pass, but the answers to these mysteries never appear. The High Tatras remain a place where a person can disappear without a trace, where search teams scour the area for months without finding a single clue. Each new case adds another name to the list of missing persons, another unsolved mystery. If you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new stories. See you soon. See you in the next episodes.